Yeah, I think the key point there is Europe is not one market. Obviously, we work for an American company and have a lot of influence on what happens in the States. But my remit is to run the EMEA business. We have 5 different regions which we run. So we have North, South, North, Central, South, Benelux, and UK. So we'll have their own various country leads there, and each one of those markets has different conditions, different pressures. So we see, my view of the market comes from those, and then also coupled with exposure to US and also to my colleagues in APAC. And what we see is different rates of growth, different adoptions of certain type of RTB, just in terms of protocols, whether it's be open RTB, PMP, and also general nervousness or a willingness to adopt more quickly. So every single region is very different. They all learn from each other, but we tend to see that the growth of programmatic continues. I think we all see the charts that come out from all the numerous sources in terms of money flowing into programmatic. And again, if we look at it on a region by region basis, it's going at faster or slower rates depending on the region or depending on the whether it be display, whether it be mobile, whether it be video. But the trend is that more money is moving that way. And so with that comes change within both the supply side and the demand side. And again, we see differences across all the different markets we're in. Yeah, so the Google, Facebook duopoly, and I'd probably start adding Amazon into that as well, in terms of walled gardens and other players in the marketplace who are potentially threatening publishers in terms of the amount of ad spend and where it goes and how that's controlled. Google in particular, in terms of the technology, in terms of DFP, a lot of publishers sit on DFP, and DFP does a great job for a whole bunch of publishers. But DFP penetration in terms of the ad server is pretty high in the UK. We're probably seeing around 90% of our publishers are on DFP. And then if we start looking in terms of the Nordics and some of Benelux, we see a lesser penetration. So from a type of ad serving perspective, there's probably not so much of it's not seen as such a threat in terms of Google sitting there within their key part of the ad decisioning, which is in the ad server. But what publishers are seeing, I think we see across all of Europe, is trying to gain control, and the way we see control is really around ad decisioning. So that publisher being in control of how they allow demand to access and buy or view their inventory. And again, that sits within the ad server. So from our perspective, it's speaking to publishers about how they can wrestle or maintain that control, and then also basically to put the rules in place of how they wish to work with the demand sources. And again, somewhere like the Nordics, Benelux, we're seeing probably a bit more adoption in terms of our ad serving capabilities, so holistic ad serving, so cross-platform, all formats. And in other regions where DFP is probably more prevalent, the conversations are now beginning more and more, and probably happening far higher up the food chain than perhaps the SSP conversation we may have had with publishers 5-10 years ago when just open RTB started coming into the marketplace as a protocol. So, again, the theme of control is something that all publishers want. It's something that we are pretty much from being a publisher-focused business, and that's not to say we don't address the demand side. We work with all the demand sources as well, but what we want to do is make sure we have credible tools in place for publishers so they can be in control of the decisioning, whether it be their direct sold or their indirect side sold via programmatic, but allowing them visibility and control of the access to their inventory, stroke their audience and their data. So the threat of Google and Facebook, I think, as more and more stats come out in terms of it being 85% or so of all digital ad spend going to those two players is real. How publishers then individually or collaboratively work together is something that we're seeing. Again, we've seen that in a number of regions in terms of coalitions, in terms of working together as publishers, or in other regions where they haven't type of worked because of the way that these type of coalitions were set up. And so the general theme, though, is publishers need to perhaps be more open with each other across Europe in terms of what they need to do to address the problem that is they're not potentially monetizing as well as they could do, but mainly they're not controlling how people access their inventory and have done to date, and how they can move forward in a perhaps slightly different, with different technology or different approaches to make sure they are trading in a more controlled environment. So using UK only as the case study, I mean, we're seeing more and more private marketplace deals. I mean, private marketplace deals have been around now for 4, 5, 6 years. They've never been entirely efficient, both from the demand and the supply side, but in essence what they're looking to do is to prioritise audience inventory to a buyer, but for numerous reasons they haven't always worked for everybody. But we're seeing that then sort of rolling more into other type of programmatic direct, or even automated guaranteed, or even direct buying potentially from advertisers themselves in terms of how they can utilise RTB technologies to execute against audiences that are sitting on some of the supply that we have. So, you know, from a UK perspective, we're seeing a growth in programmatic direct stroke private marketplace deals, but also a willingness from the market to push for more transparency in terms of how those are being actually executed, or how they're potentially not working. So there's a drive to make sure that that is a far cleaner buying environment from the sell side to the buy side. But I think the drive for PMPs, and again now taking that outside of the UK, is there in terms of people see that as a potentially a safer way of transacting. But on the flip side of that, open RTB is getting more adoption in places like in Nordics and in Italy, where perhaps there's been nervousness about opening themselves up to the open marketplace, and they've been very heavily PMP marketplaces up to this point in time, and that's in some instances executing trading deals using PMP as the mechanism. So open RTB is growing in certain regions, but in the UK marketplace, bringing it back to your original question, there's a drive for more programmatic direct business. How that's executed, whether it be PMP, automated guaranteed, client direct, is just all part of basically using the programmatic pipes to execute deals in a perhaps safer environment.